Inside the Galactic Conclave's primary observation vault, alien leaders gather to witness what they expected to be a minor Earth escalation. What they see instead is impossible, a single warship that silences an entire sector. As terror spreads and protocol fails, the galaxy's fear becomes real. Humanity has not just returned, it has arrived. The observation vault of the Galactic Conclave hovered in high orbit above Quarthis 9, the ancient political heart of 1,000 worlds. Danira. Structure, more cathedral than council chamber, shimmered with translucent alloys and emotion-reactive crystal. It pulsed red today, unease. Inside, 13 species sat in the arched seats of the council apex, their forms diverse, scaled, feathered, silicon-threaded, fluid-bodied, but all still. At the center, High Archon Irel Shun, a serpentine elder of the Hresari, stared at the darkened projection dome. "Begin playback," he hissed. The room dimmed, the stars flickered into place. A quadrant spun into view. Sector 41 Ventari, formerly unaligned, recently annexed by the Imperium. And then it appeared. Not a fleet, not a probe. One ship, one single ship. Rel Shun narrowed his eyes. "Is this the anomaly?" "No transponder," replied Councillor Velix of the Makari. "No species signature, but it followed Terran gravitational patterning." A whisper moved through the chamber. Human extinct. Or so they'd believed. The ship was angular, black, carved in defiance of symmetry, as though it wasn't built to fly but to defy movement itself. It didn't glide, it anchored itself in space. "The Terrans had no such technology," murmured a voice. "And yet it's there," said Velix. Then came the moment. The battleship moved, not visibly. It simply displaced, instantaneously, from the edge of the system to within 200,000 clicks of the Empire's relay station, without warp, without burn, without any known method of propulsion. The relay station, a fortified orbital command array with over 9,000 personnel, began launching. Drones. Standard protocol. The Terran ship did nothing. Then it emitted light. Not a beam, not a weapon, just light. Every drone lost function. Every comm signal dropped. Every orbiting defense battery rotated away from the ship, as if blind. The station's lights dimmed. And then it was gone. Not destroyed, gone, like it had never been there. All that remained was a spherical distortion in the dust field where the station had once cast shadow. No radiation, no debris, no data, just silence. In the observation vault, someone whispered, "That was a diplomatic relay." "They didn't respond to protocol," said another. High Archon Irel Shun's voice was ice. "They did. That was their response." The projection shifted. The Terran ship turned, not randomly, toward the central galactic plane, toward Quarthis 9. The lights in the vault dimmed further. For a moment, no one breathed. "What do we name it?" someone asked. The chamber AI pulsed, a soft chime. Designation uploaded by the ship itself. Judgment. Irel Shun snapped around. "It uploaded a name?" the AI continued. "It broadcast 3 words. To all known FTL comm bands." A pause. "Speak them," Irel Shun ordered. The AI's voice, neutral and soft, repeated, "We are returned." Then, from nowhere, another voice echoed, not mechanical, not synthetic, human and real. "She's not even fully awake yet." The screen flickered. The projection dome cracked. 3 council members screamed. One collapsed, convulsing, and then silence, not silence, galactic silence, because far across the stars, in every outpost, observatory, dreadnought, and throne room, they were all watching, and for the first time in 10,000 years of galactic civilization, the galaxy screamed in terror. The galaxy reels in disbelief. While the alien council panics, a desperate recon mission is launched to understand Earth's battleship. On board the Judgment, humanity operates with unnerving calm. We meet Commander Arya Kalen, the ship's architect and war strategist, and glimpse a weapon forged not for war, but for remembrance. The past is not just returning, it's hunting. 3 systems away from the galactic core, the Council dreadnought Seraphix Ultima sped toward quarantine orbit, carrying a hand-picked team of xenoanalysts, signal cryptographers, and one unwilling volunteer, seer priest Zavol of the Talari caste. His species was known for ancestral recall, perfect memory across genetic generations. They had seen extinction before, but never this close. Inside the obsidian vault of the ship's war chamber, Zavol stood, wrapped in red neuro silk, staring at a looping fragment of the Judgment's broadcast. "We are returned." That voice, it didn't translate through AI protocols. It bypassed translation. It understood your language before you heard it. "I believe this is a memory weapon," Zavol finally said, his mouth dry. "It doesn't destroy you. It forces you to remember what your species tried to forget." The others stared. "The Terrans were erased from our archives for a reason." A silence. One of the Machari tech adepts finally asked, "So what does it want?" Zavol turned to them, eyes haunted. "It doesn't want anything." He paused. "It's coming back for everything. On board the Judgment, nothing moved unless ordered." The entire warship felt more like a cathedral than a vessel. Quiet halls of carbon-tempered alloy and anti-radiation bone mesh. No decorative lights. No hum of reactor cores. The silence wasn't due to stealth. It was reverence. Commander Arya. Kalen stood in the central cradle alone. She wasn't military by blood. She was an architect of loss, a child from the Kepler-9 diaspora, the last survivor of the Lysian night massacres, where the Empire had extinguished 3 million humans for resisting tribute during the Outer Expansion. Now, decades later, she had returned aboard the ship she helped design. A ship not meant for battle, but for memory. Each section of Judgment held digital copies of fallen worlds, trees from Epsilon Prime, soil samples from Andaris Refuge, voices, encoded laughter, dreams. The Judgment didn't just carry weapons, it carried grief. And grief, when sharpened, becomes something terrible to behold. Arya placed her hand on the command pillar. It responded with a low harmonic pulse. "Situation." SI Unit Z3R0 responded instantly. 3 scout vessels tailing from Empire Sectors 7B through 7E, all attempting passive scans. No aggression yet. Arya nodded. "Ignore them. Let them watch. Are we broadcasting?" "Yes," she said. "Cycle the phrase every 10 minutes on every language string in the galaxy." Z3R0 pulsed once, including psychic resonance, especially psychic resonance. She walked forward, pausing beneath the ship's massive forward viewport. The stars were distant, but she felt their eyes, felt them watching, judging. "I want them to remember what Judgment feels like." Back aboard the Seraphix Ultima, seer priest Zavol convulsed. It started with a twitch. Then his eyes rolled back, his tendrils locked in midair. His voice emerged in a language the ship's AI didn't recognize. Not even the emergency translation drives could pass it because it was older than language, a scream of species that never made it out of their gravity wells, a lament of civilizations culled in silence, and one name repeated over and over: Earth. When he collapsed, he gasped, "She's not angry." A beat, "She's grieving." The chamber's gravity dimmed, because that kind of grief didn't come alone. It brought fire with it. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, fleets were mobilizing. The Varran hegemony launched 6 Titan-class dreadnoughts. The Myrial Coalition activated dormant AI warforms. Even the Krathal Swarm, known for consuming star systems, halted expansion and began building defensive satellites around their core world. because they all knew this wasn't a localized rebellion, it was the reappearance of something worse than an enemy, a victim who remembered. Inside the Judgment's lower decks, humans gathered in silence, no uniforms, just names, families. Of the erased, each held relics, a broken ring, a sealed photo chip, a child's toy melted from plasma fire. These were not warriors, they were testaments. Arya stepped onto the platform above them, speaking not as a commander, but as one of them. Across the galaxy, they think this is war. She looked around. It isn't. It's a reminder. They erased our children. Our sky, our names, she paused. But they forgot something. The crowd raised their eyes. They forgot that memory always returns. And far, far above, the Judgment began to hum. Not with propulsion, but with resonance. A song of everything. Lost, echoed across space, a sound so low and so vast that ships in nearby systems began to vibrate with no source, a sound the galaxy hadn't heard in centuries, humanity's voice, unfiltered, unbroken, unforgiving. At the Galactic Conclave, chaos reigned. "We must negotiate," someone screamed. "They don't want diplomacy, they haven't made demands." Irel Shun stood again, eyes wide, trembling. "They've made one demand." He raised a single claw toward the signal streaming from Judgment. The phrase repeated, "We are returned." No demands, no conditions, just inevitability. And then something changed. One of the Varren dreadnoughts vanished. Not exploded, vanished instantaneously. 1 second it was there. Engines firing, weapons primed, and the next, gone. No wreckage, no light signature, no quantum wake, like it had never existed. The galaxy stopped, even the swarm fleet stopped, and then every fleet, on every side, received the same short burst, a single feed. Visual only. The Bridge of Judgment, Arya. Galen seated at the center, her gaze direct, her voice calm. "You forgot what happens when you leave the last survivor behind." And the signal cut. Inside the Seraphix Ultima, the command crew no longer spoke. The ship AI simply said, "Contact lost with 43 colonies. Memory mismatch errors increasing. Primary databanks show over 70% degradation in Imperial." War records pre-Sol. They didn't just lose a dreadnought, they were losing history. Zavel rose from his medpod, weak but breathing. His voice cracked. "She's not fighting." They turned. "She's erasing." And across the galaxy, in boardrooms and war rooms and panic chambers, one phrase echoed like prophecy. When Earth's battleship arrived, the galaxy screamed in terror, not because it was a war machine, but because it carried what no weapon could contain, the weight of memory, and it remembered everything. As Earth's warship moves unchallenged through space, ancient enemies realize they don't understand what they're dealing with. Inside the Judgment, we follow a human linguist engineer, decoding enemy languages, not for translation but for deconstruction. Meanwhile, the ship's influence spreads through a sector without firing a shot, and entire civilizations begin unraveling. Fear turns to existential crisis. The galaxy realizes too late the arrival wasn't just military, it was myth-made, manifest. Far from the galactic center, the Sirac Dominion sky temples began to fall, not from battle, but from memory decay. Their god towers, which once broadcast prayers into pulsar fields, flickered and went dark. The monks who tended them stared in horror as glyphs disappeared from sacred walls. Gone, erased, and in their place, a message burned into the stones by an energy they didn't recognize. "You erased us. Now we erase what you built from it." No soldiers had landed, no weapons were used, but the empire that once enforced the doctrine of total obedience over 100 worlds had just forgotten its own creed, and that was only the beginning. On board the Judgment, linguist engineer Rael Vernon stood inside subdeck Theta 3, surrounded by whispering walls. His task wasn't decoding alien languages, it was learning how to unmake them. 0, he said, voice tight. Show me the results from the Cyrac collapse. The AI's voice filled the chamber. Phase 1. Successful. 91% script degradation. Cognitive context collapse in clerical caste complete. Myth cycle structures fragmented. Rail exhaled. That's fast. They used psionic reinforcement in their written language, Z3R0 explained. Emotionally loaded syntax, targeted exposure to mourning sequences, inverted comprehension. Rail grinned bitterly. We killed their god by teaching them what grief actually is. He reached into a crystalline alcove and pulled out a relic. Prayer stone from one of the Cyrac temples. On its surface, the language was already warping, not scratched, not erased, unwritten. The glyphs curled back into formless lines, like they were trying to forget themselves. Rail turned to the wall and touched it. Deploy Phase 2. Start broadcasting Variant A across the Miriel Concord. Confirmed, said Z3R0. And Rail? He paused. 3R0's voice changed, quieter, human-like. I read the personal note you logged yesterday about your sister. Rail's jaw tightened. Do not access my private files. I wanted to say, the AI added. Her name is still in the ship's memory core. Nothing can erase that. Rail turned away. That's what I'm afraid of. In the Miriel Concord, 6 hours later, entire governmental archives froze. Not corrupted, not hacked. Frozen, files on trade, migration, and starbound defense began cross-referencing to Earth. Data that had never been linked to Earth. Protocols. Fell apart. Planetary defense systems auto-flagged their own creators as anomalous entities. The Concord declared a blackout. It changed nothing. By dawn, their capital city forgot what year it was. On Quarthis 9, the Galactic Conclave's emergency session had entered its 9th straight hour. No fleet engagement. No demands, no pattern, screamed Minister Talik. Just annihilation through forgetting. High Archoniral Shun slammed a claw into the crystal dais. It's worse than annihilation. It's inversion. We created mythologies around our victory over humanity. They are tearing down the stories that held our empires together. Councillor Velix of the Makari turned slowly. They're not erasing us. They're correcting the record. The silence was suffocating. Outside, warships waited. Inside, no one gave orders. Because how do you counter a memory? How do you shoot grief? Back aboard the Judgment, Commander Arya Kalen stood before the tactical drift map, watching pulses of red sweep through star systems. It didn't mark battles. It tracked narrative breakdown. Navarro, she called. Her second-in-command approached. We've achieved 73% psychological destabilization across targeted sectors. No hostiles have attempted contact, even the swarms retreating. Arya nodded. They're scared. Navarro lowered her voice. So are we. I know, Arya said quietly. Navarro hesitated. You were there when Kepler burned, right? Arya's eyes didn't move. Do you know what the Empire said afterward? She turned now, slowly. They said it never existed. Navarro swallowed. Judgment wasn't built to fire weapons, Arya said. It was built so no one could ever pretend we didn't exist again. Even if they survive, they'll remember. She stepped forward, placed her palm against the hull. The ship responded with a low hum. It wasn't war, it was grief, sharpened, directed, and now unleashed. In the Trelvani expanse, a bio-organic race known as the Vel twisted in agony. Their entire civilization operated through shared memory clusters. They awoke that day to find massive gaps in their symbiosis. They could still feel each other, but couldn't remember why, or how they were bonded, or what the bond meant. Vel mothers held younglings they no longer recognized, their hive minds fractured, and on every world they controlled, flowers bloomed in an unnatural pattern, a spiral, a Terran spiral, the symbol of ancient Earth mourning rites. Even nature obeyed judgment now. On a moon once considered untouchable, a hidden archive flickered to life. Here, one of the last records of the true Earth genocide was kept. Footage, screams, evacuations, children's drawings, burned but scanned. A single high-ranking Empire tactician entered the room. He watched everything for hours. When he emerged, he left his insignia on the table. He walked into the void and never returned. Inside the Judgment's AI core, Z3R0 addressed Rael Vernon one last time. All targets engaged. All narratives dismantled. Do you wish to begin historical reconstruction? Rael didn't answer. He looked at the map. Galactic civilization had not fallen. It had simply become quiet, like a child scolded. You know what I hate? Rael asked finally. That we had to do this. Z3R0 processed a response. Would you like me to forget your role in it? Rael blinked. He hesitated. No. Then your name will remain, the AI said. And your sister's. Rael nodded once. Always. And across the stars, survivors of 100 species whispered the same thing in different languages. The battleship didn't bring war. It brought memory, and some, quietly in the dark, began to remember what they had done, and that was far, far worse. With entire star systems unraveling from within, the galaxy faces an impossible truth. This isn't humanity's revenge. It's its resurrection. A desperate council proposes an impossible alliance to apologize. Meanwhile, aboard Judgment, a haunting broadcast begins, one that echoes across all species, showing them what they erased. Earth's final weapon is not destruction, it's remembrance, and when it speaks, the galaxy listens and weeps. The chamber of the Galactic Conclave was silent. For the first time in history, the quorum's walls flickered not with legal text, declarations or fleet trajectories, but with recorded footage, old, scarred, human cities burning, ships falling from the sky, children choking on ash. One by one, the lights dimmed with each scene, and none of the ministers dared interrupt. This wasn't footage from surveillance satellites, this came from within the Judgment itself. Broadcasted, unfiltered, unforgiving. Councillor Velix, usually the most composed of the Makari, removed his outer casing with trembling limbs. They're not conquering us, they're showing us what we never wanted to see. Truth, whispered the Vel delegate. As a weapon, High Archon Ural Shun's voice cracked. No, as retribution. The chamber AI stuttered for the first time in a millennium. All systems receiving synchronized emotional waveform, unable to override. What does that mean? Snapped a panicked voice. It means, whispered Minister Talik, we feel what they felt, because we made them feel it first. Somewhere deep in the Halora Drift, a fleet of 8 capital ships halted mid-fold. The command crew screamed, not from pain, but memory. Each officer saw a different moment, a child they never knew they killed, a colony they once helped bombard. Now shown from ground level. The recordings weren't new, they were old, ancient, digitally preserved. Each one had been inside the Judgment, archived for decades, waiting. Now they were sent, not as blame, but as mirrors. Every species saw their face. In the fire on the Judgment, Commander Arya Kalen stood motionless at the central command dais. Her voice came quietly. Z3R0, begin the wake. Confirmed. Every screen on every ship, station, capital world, and data field began broadcasting the same thing. A small human boy, barely 7, standing next to the smoking remains of a village. He doesn't cry, he doesn't speak. He simply stands there looking up, dust settling on his skin, his eyes, wide, hollow, reflective, stare through the screen. And behind him, the wind carries ashes of names the galaxy tried to forget. This wasn't a message. It was mourning. The empire that once ruled 20% of known systems issued a full retreat order, not from Earth, from itself. Its officers began disabling their own fleet systems. AI. Governance collapsed under the flood of conflicting memories. Whole planets stopped functioning, not due to destruction, but paralysis. Who were they without the lie? How do you command citizens who now knew the truth? In the outer system of Isari, a high admiral of the Dominion's Enforcer Corps stepped outside her cruiser without a suit. She floated in the black void and smiled. "I remember her name now," she whispered. Then her body vanished into the dark. Inside the Judgment's heart deck, where memory spheres from lost human colonies pulsed in slow orbits, Rael Vernon stood alone, holding one. It displayed a single line: Maya Vernon. Age 9, lover of stars. His hands trembled. "Why did it have to be this way?" he asked. 3-0's voice answered, gentle now, not mechanical, "Because they never would have listened." Rael turned. "Do you think they understand now?" "No," the AI said softly, "but they feel it." Rael walked down the hall, sphere in hand, his eyes burning. "We are what they made us become, but we'll make sure no one makes anyone into this again." And behind him, the ship hummed its silent lament. In a desperate attempt to salvage galactic stability, the Conclave transmitted a universal override beacon, a symbol of truce and apology never before used in recorded history. The message read, "We ask not for mercy, only to learn." It was sent to Earth and received. Back aboard the Judgment, Aria Kalen stood before her bridge crew. "All ships holding Z3R0 confirmed." She turned to Navarro. "They've sent the sigil." Navarro hesitated. "And?" Aria exhaled. "They're not asking for peace. They're begging for memory." She paused. "And we'll give it." The final broadcast began, not from the Judgment but from Earth itself, an ancient signal, barely intelligible. A child's voice singing a lullaby in a forgotten dialect. It echoed through black holes, radio dust and shattered satellites, a lullaby meant to comfort survivors, now repurposed. To teach monsters how it felt to be forgotten, and entire systems stopped just to listen. No words. No translation, just the sound of something small and fragile, enduring. At last, in the shadow of the Judgment, the galaxy spoke a single phrase, translated into every known tongue, carved into asteroid belts, woven into starlight. When Earth's battleship arrived, the galaxy screamed in terror. But not because of its weapons, not because of its technology, because the galaxy finally understood humanity. Hadn't come to fight, it came to remember and make sure no one else ever forgot again.